Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you, my Christian friends, through our Lord and Savior Jesus. Amen. Continue our series on transformed disciples. Today we talk about serving or ministering as Jesus ministered. I'm using the word minister here not as a person that is a pastor, but rather meaning to serve. He has demonstrated this ministry in his words in Mark chapter 10, part of our gospel lesson. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. This attitude of service was centermost in the heart and life of Jesus. But in our today's world, how common is it for people to lead without putting their own welfare or personal wants first? Not very common at all, or at least I've not seen it. Have you? I mean, every now and then, yes, we hear of someone who will risk life and limb and rescue someone else and serve them, even laying aside their own welfare, and we say, yay, to all of that. We usually, in fact, call them heroes, do we not? And certainly our police officers, our soldiers, firefighters, EMT personnel, all fall into that category, to be sure. But when I mention heroes, I am really talking about more than just one heroic moment in one's life. Okay? I don't want to diminish any heroic act for that matter. But I think Jesus both modeled and taught much more profound heroism. Would you not agree? I mean, Jesus was heroic in character and purpose of life that produced a steady stream of sacrificial actions on his part. Just to name a few of them, the foot washing comes to mind easiest. What a sacrifice that was. Or how about his Last Supper, where he provides us his body and blood, which we will share again this morning. And note especially where he provided that from. His dying on a cross. He couldn't provide his body and blood if it weren't for the cross. All heroic actions of serving Jesus. Can you imagine a life so giving and serving that one's own personal needs and wants do not play a role? The act of loving others sacrificially is not something that comes naturally, as my little picture points out. And if any of you have grandkids, you know of what I speak, right? Exactly. Most of us try to avoid situations where we may get taken advantage of, or that might include someone who wants to hurt, right? Of course. But that is not true for Jesus, is it? Did he avoid suffering? Did he turn away from those that might take advantage of him? Just the opposite. This was never more evident than when Jesus told his disciples again in our text. We're going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests, the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. Jesus was going up to Jerusalem for what? He tells us. He knew exactly the suffering that lay ahead of him. And he went anyway. Imagine hearing those words for the first time today as one of his disciples, or maybe the first time you really kind of pondered this text. Sound maybe a little pessimistic perhaps, or maybe lacking faith and wins the day. But Jesus led with weakness, did he not? With the sole purpose of ministering to others, which ultimately meant an abandonment of himself, his own wants, his own well-being, his own desires. You see, to minister as Jesus ministered means to follow in his steps, and then giving ourselves to others as well. Mother Teresa once said, "She is free to be nothing Therefore, God can use her for anything. I like that phrase. So how did Jesus minister? What kind of ministry did Jesus have? Well, Jesus had a ministry to others that was first and foremost minus himself. Pretty hard for us to selflessly minister to other people. A lot of times we do, and there's something in it for us, right? Not Jesus. So often we want to be Christian without maybe being Christ-like. I came across this little sign: Christian without Christ, Christ is crossed out, leaves I-A-N. You know what that equals? I am nothing without Christ. We cannot leave him out, being Christian. If we do, we are absolutely nothing. We can take comfort from the fact that Jesus' own disciples struggled with their selfishness, to be sure. After Jesus told them that he would suffer and die, okay, and I'm sure they were all kind of shocked by that message, the text tells us then. I don't know how much you pay attention to those little connecting words in the text, but we ought to. It tells us very simply, Jesus told them they're going to suffer and die 3 days later and so forth. Then, meaning the very next word spoken. So what came next? Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him and said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." I am not sure if there is a more loaded question than that in the whole Bible. Okay? And then you put it next to what was just said by Jesus, and you go, duh! Jesus is much kinder. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other on your left in your glory." How would you have judged these words of the disciples? Selfless or selfish? Or maybe even worse, self-centered, self-idolizing, self-worshiping. What were these guys thinking? We almost ask ourselves. I mean, had they not heard Jesus' words, suffering and dying and all that? I mean, did Jesus' words simply pass over their ears without registering? We might call that today selective hearing. At least that's what my wife calls it. She says, "I am very selective in what I hear," she says. Maybe some of you other guys have been accused of that very same thing. Somehow, James and John did not make the connection between following Jesus and how they were to live. There was a huge, and I mean huge, disconnect. Like many ambitious disciples, James and John were simply asking, "What's in it for me?" And we ask that all the time, don't we? What's in it for me? They wanted a position of power and prestige and honor and so forth. I mean, sitting at the right and left side of Jesus in his kingdom. What power and position is that? But they asked for all that without any understanding of the sacrificial ministry that went with it. That's the saddest thing of all. They had no idea. Jesus' answer to them was a nice way of saying simply no. Okay? Very simple. "You don't know what you're asking." "Oh boy, don't you know what you're asking," Jesus could well have said. "Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink, or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Like, right, did they have any idea? By the cup and baptism, he just simply meant his coming suffering and death. You see this phrase used in the garden as Jesus prays to his Father. "Let this cup pass from me. And if not, except I have to drink it, your will be done." It's the cup of suffering. It's the cup of pain. It's the agony that you and I carry cup is decided for us oftentimes. We don't have a choice except to drink it. Did the disciples understand this? Did they really know what was coming in their life? You see, ministry is never about personal advancement. It is always about personal sacrifice. You see, in God's plan, greatness is never measured of self-promotion, but is always that of self-abandonment. It's not how great we are, it's how great God is through us. Like James and John, we too must face our pride in order to serve as Jesus served. You see, there's a fine line between being confident, which is great, and we ought to be, and then we cross that line and become prideful and self-centered. Very fine line separates those two. For James and John, it was not with confidence that they responded, "Oh yeah, we can do it, Lord. No problems like falling off a log, right? We can die for you," all that. Did they really think so? Yeah. C.S. Lewis once said, "Pride gets no pleasure of having something, only out of having more of it than someone else. Richer, more clever, or better looking. It's the comparison that makes one proud." Pride and competition are basic elements in Satan's strategy and temptation. James and John desired power and position, which then blinded them to Jesus' real mission. They wanted honor without sacrifice. Oh yeah, they wanted positions of power and fame and so forth that they had not earned or deserved, thus revealing their selfish and sinful natures. Point blank. The law of sacrifice goes like this. To attain something of greater value, one must be willing to give up something of lesser value. Think about it. You give up your life here for a life in eternity? Lesser value? Greater value? You give up your time and money and effort to serve and love others so that God might be seen in their life? Lesser value? Greater value? Yeah. You see, then and now Jesus calls his disciples to drink this cup. That is, if we want to be like Jesus. So what's in the cup? Very simple. It's called doulos. You've probably not heard that word because it's a Greek word. And it simply means servant. Okay? To become a slave for Christ is what is in your cup of life and mine as well. But are you sure you want to drink from it? We might turn up our nose a little bit and scrunch our faces and say, "What?" Jesus said it best in our text. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Paul said it this way in 1 Corinthians 9. Though I am free and belong to no man, in other words, Paul was not a slave, I make myself a slave for Christ to everyone. Why? To win as many as possible. And I do all of this for the sake of the gospel, that I too may share in its blessings. Ultimately, down the road, Paul realized, unless I practice what I preach, what good am I? So, are you willing to practice what you preach? Are you willing to minister in that way? Evidently, the rest of the disciples were not. The text tells us, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. That's all it said. They became indignant. So what does the word indignant mean? It means to be aroused to anger, to blow your top, Or to simply say they were so angry with James and John that they had tried to edge them out of something they wanted as well. But either maybe didn't have the guts to say so, or didn't even think of it at the time. It's kind of like my brothers and I growing up. There was one piece of pie left in the refrigerator following supper that night. My brother got to it first. I became indignant. Yeah, exactly. So what does Jesus do? He called them all together and he said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Not so with you." Why? Because even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is saying this world is all about power and position, serving me, okay? When a person has that power and position, what usually is happening? We have to serve them, right? They're saying, serve us. Our politicians, our leaders, our government, you name it, we serve them. Serve us. In Jesus' kingdom, not about power and position, but rather about servanthood. That is why in Jesus' kingdom, it's all about service. But notice, they sound very similar, don't they? Serve us, service. And it's real easy to get them confused. Jesus ministered with a different kind of power. A power that crushes empires, that being Satan's evil empire. A power that brings down walls of separation between God and mankind through his suffering and dying on the cross. Jesus does all that not with an iron hand or a huge army, but with a heart full of love and service by dying on a cross. If you and I want to position of honor, we will not go to the front of the line, but to the back of the line. And there begin to serve in Jesus' name. You know, it's easy for today's church to get into a serve us mentality. We got to do it this way because this is what we like. This is how we like it. Okay? And many people feel that the church should fill my needs and wants. And if not, something's wrong, or I'm going to go elsewhere. Fill my wants and essentially serve us. Jesus says, not so with you. Instead, the Church of Jesus Christ is to serve others, particularly those who don't know Jesus yet. Care for their needs, thus serve as Jesus served. So, are you ready to serve as Jesus served? That's the bottom line, isn't it? And only you can answer that. You're so cold you haven't thought of any questions, right? You're frozen? See, you're frozen. Okay, everybody do this. I did that for two reasons. Number one, your hands are warmer. And number two, you're applauding my sermon. Hey! No, just you. Comments or questions? Please, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. According to that, they were wrong for wanting to sit on the right hand of Jesus. Now, isn't that what we want to do when we go to heaven? We sit at the right hand? I mean, are we wrong for wanting to do that?
Okay, what James and John were really asking is like second and third in command. Okay? Yeah, you and I want to go to heaven, and according to Jesus, the judgment scene, the righteous go on the right, and the unrighteous go on the left. Okay? That's not in this play at all. Okay? James and John are asking for very specific honors to sit at the right and left hand of Jesus when he comes in his glory. In other words, we want to be second and third in command. You're first, Jesus, but I want to be second, and my brother wants to be third. So it has all to do about power, prestige, position, all of that. Jesus said, not so amongst you. So don't confuse this with the other story of the sheep on the right, the goats on the left kind of thing. That doesn't come into play here at all. Okay? All right? Please.
Pastor, when people say they want to go to a church, not saying just St. John's or anything, but they say they want to go to church because they want to get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like being selfish? Because they're asking like, we want to, have Bible studies, we want to, get to know Jesus better, we want to know and understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It can be. It doesn't automatically have to be. You don't go to a restaurant to get a lousy meal, do you? Being good. You don't come to church to get a lousy meal. Okay? You want to be fed. But if being fed means in a certain style, we had people leave this place because we put a screen up. The way I was feeding you, oh man, we can't have movies in church. That's hogwash, folks. Whether I put a tablecloth in your table or polish the silverware or what, it's the taste of the food, folks, not the implements with which I deliver it. You see? There's a difference. It's got to be a certain way. I don't wear gowns. I had one lady leave the church because you don't look like a pastor. I said, what's the pastor look like? Well, you got this robe on, they got this, and whatever, and so forth. And of course, I don't look like that, do I? Now, I don't dress in bib overalls, okay. All right? Now, I have some. If you'd like me to wear them, no, just keep them, okay? So, what we're talking about is externals. Yes, you want to be fed. Yes, you want the Bible to be taught in its truth and purity. And I would recommend you leave the church if that is not happening. But I have never heard anybody say, I'm leaving your church because you're not teaching the Word of God in its truth and purity. I've never had that happen. And I've had countless people leave the church for all kinds of other reasons. All right? Some might leave this morning because we didn't have the boilers up. Hey, I'm sorry. I told Chris, don't bother. No, I didn't. Okay? You see how we somehow get our wants mixed into a good something with that. You see? I mean, the fact that James and John wanted to be in heaven is a good thing. The problem was they wanted to be sitting on either side of Jesus. Okay? I'm going to be thankful just to get there. Period. I'd rather attend the door in heaven than be a king in hell. Okay? Bottom line. Hal?
Yeah, actually, I had a really good question at the beginning, reading along with Gary with the sermon, and or not the sermon, but the gospel. And the first question that came out of my mind was, what were those two thinking? And when you brought it up on the screen, I was floored. I was like, perfect. So you answered that question for me. But now I have one, the serving part. Okay, should we not focus on serving those that are in need, and not so much the people that like you mentioned, our government, people that moved up the channel and their careers or whatever? Should we be focusing more on them, or the people? I feel that we should be focusing more on people in need, not these people that have got it all already, but they want it. They want to be served.
The problem is that people that got it all, worldly speaking wise, probably don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Okay? I'm not saying they all don't just because they live in mansions. No, some don't. I know that for a fact, and so do you. Okay? So what we have in spiritual treasures is worth a whole lot more than what they have in worldly treasures. So that disconnect is what we're placed oftentimes to help people understand. Is it going to happen overnight? First time we talk to them? No, of course not. Okay? I'm not against being rich. I would love to be. Okay? But the point, very simple being, is I know I'm spiritually rich beyond measure. And so what I lack worldly-wise, so be it. So be it. I'm one day going to be in heaven, and so will you, regardless of what your blessings on this earth amount to. Okay. Please.
To continue on with what Dorothy said on, if you come to church and you because you want Bible study and you want to be fed, as you said. But then if you don't do anything with that, then what? So like I'm saying, for me, even just recently, right? I want to be able to come, be fed, and then do something with that knowledge and understanding that I received.
Correct. Unless it's going to be used, we're just hearing the message and not doing it, as James says in chapter 2. He says very specifically, don't just be hearers of the word, but be doers of the word as well. So that's very important. Obviously, as we age and our health situation changes, what I used to do as a young buck at 20, I don't do anymore at 65, okay? Right? I can't. Plain and simple. So please, as we get older and our gifts and abilities change as a result of that, don't beat yourself up and say, well, I used to do this or I used to do that, now I can't do this and can't do that. And so find something you can do. I had a little lady in the nursing home, and she said, Pastor Jim, I have no idea why God is keeping me here. Obviously, I believe that He got something for me to do. I don't have the foggiest idea what that is. I said, I got an idea. She said, yeah? I said, yeah. I said, what do you have more of than anybody else in this whole blooming world? She thought a little bit. She said, time. I said, yeah. And you probably can't hold a great big old prayer book, but could you use some of that time to pray for your pastor, pray for your church, pray for your family, pray for your nieces and nephews that are not close to Jesus? How are you spending an hour a day in the nursing home when you got nothing else to do? And pray for us. She said, you know what? That's a good idea. She's praying yet. Okay? Find something you can serve the Lord with. Yes, it's probably not going to be painting the gym ceiling, okay? Anymore. I understand that. Maybe you never did. I don't know, okay? Or lifting the heavy boxes in the food pantry, right? I mean, there's going to come a day where I'm not going to be able to do that. You're probably bouncing up against that right now, right? You see? So we need service all over the place. If you find something that you can, with your abilities and strength, do in the name of our Jesus. Okay? All right, we go on with our offering, and then